During my last video, we talked about the importance of maintaining your good health and really paying attention to your numbers, your health factors, especially in light of COVID-19. And I told a story about someone who had a really close call with their health, hadn't been paying attention to the signs, and had a moment, a serious moment. And that person was Mike Taylor, who is regional manager for our domestic foundry group in the Midwest in the United States. And he's here to talk today about his experience.
As John said, I did have a close call, and I like to call it my speed bump. Aortic dissection was the ultimate diagnosis, and I'll just kind of walk back through the whole process. Probably for about a year, I'd had some tightness in my chest, but wasn't really sure what it was, and didn't bother to ask. It's not something we do, I think, as men. And then, like John said, we have high normal blood pressure, and it's okay because of that normal word that's in there. But as you'll hear, there was more to it than that. So I did have a little bit of chest discomfort, but I wrote it off as maybe my exercise was a little more difficult that day, or for whatever reason, maybe pollen count was high. You name it, I had excuses. Even though I don't have allergies, I probably used that one. So this was at the beginning of the COVID situation when states were closing down. It was back in March. And I had been on the road for about 3 weeks, home on the weekends, but like so many people, we were fortunate to be busy at that time. So this was the third of 3 weeks. Restaurants were closing. The only thing that was open was drive-thrus, and even with that, I wasn't making good choices. So I was in the hotel. I was at a job in Franklin, Kentucky on Tuesday, getting ready to cast the furnace. Then on Wednesday we go in, everything's getting prepared. Wednesday night in the hotel, I'm eating, again, junk food, nothing that's would qualify probably as being nutritious, and had a sudden pain in my chest, like I had gotten punched. And I've never had indigestion before. If I had, I didn't remember it. So I get up and do probably what the majority of people would do, is a few jumping jacks and some burpees, thinking I can work through it. Still had tightness, uncomfortable. I don't think it was to the pain level yet. But that was Wednesday night. Thursday I go into the plant. We cast the furnace. Everything went well. And I told the contractor, I said, "Hey man, I don't feel well. I'm gonna head back to the hotel. I normally help him clean up." And he said, "That's fine. We got this." On the way from the plant back to the hotel, I stopped at a local grocery store and got comfort food: milk, sandwich meat, bread, cheese, things that I eat at home. Because again, I'm thinking it's because I've had something bad to eat. Thursday night at the hotel, I wasn't feeling well, and I talked to my buddy who had just gotten home from having COVID. He was actually in a coma for 9 days. And Tuesday that week he had gotten home, so we talked for a few minutes. And I was asking him, did you have issue breathing? And so he was describing his symptoms to me, and I didn't tell him why, but so I get off the phone, I'm thinking, is that what I have? Is that what's going on? Because I was having difficulty breathing because of the tightness in the chest. Self-diagnosing. So Thursday night I go to bed, and I might have slept 2 hours total from the discomfort that's now turning into pain. And I actually got up during the night and took 2 showers, thinking maybe during the cast I had breathed in some of the dust. I had a mask on, but I was talking to the contractors. We're putting the VCast additive in and telling the guys how much and confirming that it's in there. So I thought maybe I just inhaled a bunch of our dust. So like I said, might have slept 2 hours. And Friday morning, I finally get ready. It's 5:30, 6 o'clock, and hadn't slept. But I felt like there was an elephant on my chest, and the pain was more than anything I'd ever had in my life. And I've been through a couple of knee surgeries and hernia, staples in my legs, the typical American growing up, I think. But I had the elephant on my chest, and I was breathing through a straw, and very, very uncomfortable. So I drove to the job site, told the contractor Joe, and I said, hey, I still don't feel well. I'm going to head home. And he said, Mike, you don't look well. You should probably go to the hospital. Well, I know Joe's not a doctor, so I didn't heed his warning and headed north. Had about a 4-hour drive to get home. Just sitting in that car, and I don't remember a whole lot about it. Sitting in that car, just the pain, and I was completely sweating from the pain. Stopped one time to get gas, and I remember walking in, make a pit stop, and walking back out. And once I got in the car, it took me 2 or 3 minutes to catch my breath. But I knew this was something beyond what I understood COVID to be. And that was, it was just north of Bowling Green, and I had about 3 hours left to go. So did a lot of praying driving back. Hadn't contacted my wife yet, not until I'd passed Louisville, because I knew, like Joe, she would say, well, if you don't feel that well, why don't you stop at a hospital? So I'd passed Bowling Green, Elizabethtown, Louisville, and now I'm past Louisville, so I called her. Said, hey, I'm coming home. She excited that I was a little early. I said, I'm just going to come home and lay down. If you would set the futon up in the spare bedroom, because I'm not sure what's going on. So she asked me what was going on. I think I understood that it was beyond anything respiratory. Just being able to talk was extremely uncomfortable. So she said, well, why don't we meet at the hospital? I said, okay. And probably like most people, to admit that they need to go to a hospital is a big leap of faith, because that's not something I normally do. To give you an analogy, I had staples in my shin last summer from a mountain bike accident. Just so I didn't have to go back to the hospital, I removed them myself. I don't recommend that, but to kind of put it into perspective, that my agreeing to go to the hospital got her attention. So made it home, and I'm thankful I did. At any point, I could have crossed the center line, taken somebody else with me, or not even made it, but I did, thankfully. So I get to the hospital, I see where she's parked, and I prefer to park where there's nobody around my vehicle, so I parked out in what I understood to be the visitor parking lot. And I came walking up, and she's just shaking her head, and she said, Mike, we're going into the emergency room. Why didn't you park up here? I said, well, it's okay. The car will be back here. So we walk in, and she's already had tears in her eyes, because she described me as being gray, which found out later was from lack of blood going to my brain. Insert jokes here, I guess. But so we walk into the ER, and they asked what the situation was, and I said, well, I'm having a hard time breathing. And I'm sure their first thought was the COVID situation. So everybody's masking up and putting everything on. I said, and I'm having severe chest pain, which I hadn't told my wife that yet. So when she hears that, it changes everything. So they rushed me back to the emergency prep area, asking me a lot of questions, preparing me for surgery, with the initial diagnosis being a heart attack. But thankfully, I didn't fit all the qualifications for a heart attack, because here's where the story, there's a fork in the road. There's so many forks in the road in the story that I was very fortunate. If they had treated me for a heart attack, given what I had, my time might have run out. So I had a couple of EKGs, and the second one they recognized that instead of heart attack, which is a blockage of arteries, my aorta had split in two, so I was internally bleeding. And statistically, I found out later, aortic dissection is what it's called. Only 20% of the people that have them make it to the hospital, and then out of that, there's only a small fraction that make it through the procedure. So, and then the other thing is it's usually a 2-hour window, so I beat those odds too, thankfully. So I get ushered to the EKG, the second EKG, when they diagnosed what it was, and because it's such a unique surgery, I was on the south side of Indy. I was then quickly moved to the north side of Indy to catch up with a doctor capable of performing the surgery. Get up there, and everybody's already scrubbed in, and we're in the ER, or in the surgery room. And the doctor has a piece of paper for me, and he's asking me to sign it, letting me know that there's no guarantees with what I'm about to do. So, hey, I understand. Do your best. I guess that's all we can ask for. He's just shaking his head and smiling because he said, I like your attitude. So I got more of this for you if things go well. So, surgery was about 4.5 hours, and they had contacted my wife just prior to the surgery, and the initial phone call to her was that I'd had a heart attack, but it was actually heart failure. So the doctor that told her that explained, well, the good news is he didn't have a heart attack. The not so good news is he's got a long surgery ahead of him. So after 4.5 hours, I was out of it. This was Good Friday. Saturday, I come to in the ICU with a lot of care and a lot of great people around me, and things had worked out. I've got a pretty cool scar, actually, a couple of them now. They had the opening in the chest and doing the repair, and pretty much where the aorta had split, there's a sleeve now around the outside of it. So I've got some new parts that hopefully last another 100,000 miles or so. Not only did they repair the tear in the aorta, there was also an aneurysm on that same aorta. So it was kind of a double whammy, but it was a good thing they found that. They were able to repair it at that time. So my recovery started on Easter Sunday when I was moved from the intensive care to whatever the next level down is. And everybody's still masked up because of COVID, and the idea was to get me out of there as soon as possible. So on Monday, I took my first steps, which is, according to the surgeon, was pretty impressive. And it's usually a week after your surgery before you actually get out of bed. And I was released on Wednesday to the care of my wife, who did an amazing job. She's not a nurse, but she could have been. She really took care of me and my kids. So we get home, and I've got I would call it a stroller, but it's a walker that I had to use, and my goal was to get rid of that thing as soon as possible. Thankfully, it only lasted a few days, and I was able to get around. And then we were talking to the surgeon. Actually, when I was still in the hospital, the surgeon was describing to me, asking me if I knew how lucky I was. That he gave me the statistics, and that from here on, really need to concentrate on getting my blood pressure down. I had some genetic reasons behind it, but probably more my untreated high blood pressure. The high normal, as John has said in the past, was a great description of what I had. I would go to the doctor when I needed something repaired, usually, not checked. And that was always my mental excuse was, I've got high blood pressure because I need staples on my leg, or because I have a hernia, or because I'm repairing my knee. Not because it was something I needed to take care of. And in my mind, it was, I could control it with diet, I could control it with my exercise. Well, back to this discussion with the surgeon, I probably had 30 to 45 minutes left of blood, basically, internally, because I was bleeding out, before the outcome would have probably been different. And so that was an eye-opener. I'm on medication now and will be for as long as they tell me to be. So definitely the untreated high blood pressure, and I can think back even in my 20s, I was diagnosed with high blood pressure. And again, back to I can take care of this, and I'll eat better, I'll exercise, and situation will get better. Well, it didn't. And so the lifestyle changes are continue to exercise, continue to be active, and eat well. So I got fortunate in very many ways. And if I can just pass on some advice, if you've got any idea of high blood pressure, any thought of anybody ever saying to you, you might have to have you should have your blood pressure checked, and please listen. And it's not a joke. I'm laughing about it because I'm fortunate, but the outcome could have easily been different for me. And pay attention to it. You know, it's not just us. We're here for our family and for our kids, and there's a lot of people out there counting on us. So do it for them, for anybody.